Hello. So in this video, I think I'm gonna talk a little bit more about I'm gonna talk a little bit more about like my spiritual journey or whatever, my faith journey or whatever through college. Because I think in college it's a little bit more fresh on my mind than like high school. High school, I can give you like a synopsis. It was just like whatever, I just went to like CCE. That's just like Catholic church. I don't know, after school, whatever. I don't know what they call it. Church school. Like, I just went to church school like on Wednesdays or Sundays or something like that for a couple years. And then not until my senior year did I get like an actual. Not until my senior year. I'm not saying like the rest of the years weren't informative, because they were. I just didn't pay attention. Same thing with like math. I just never really paid attention to math. But it was more just like, I was like, whatever. This is. I'll just like, cool. I believe in this stuff. Dope. I don't know why, but it's cool. Like I was cool. Right. I never felt indoctrinated or tricked or anything like that. I was very aware of like what an atheist was and what like questioning was and stuff like that. But it was just like, so some people like questioning the idea of like what you're brought up with is like a big idea. It's like a big deal to them. It's like, that's cool and everything, but like, it's like, and I'll get to like my faith journey. I guess it wasn't a synopsis, but it's like, to me it was questioning everything that like I was brought up with. Like, that's appropriate like in a lot of situations, but sometimes it's just like, I don't know, like I kind of leave things the way they are, and at some point I might question them like when I'm a little bit older. But like, people feel like rushed to like, as soon as they like start questioning like the religion, they question these other things, and then they're just completely different in a couple of months or weeks. And I've done that where it's like, it's not healthy. It's like my freshman year, it was just, I was like, I wouldn't call it neurotic, but I was crazy. I was just saying all these things, like I believe all this stuff, and it's like, you get a little too excited, and then you kind of go down a certain rabbit hole that you don't really know how to pull yourself out of, and you don't really realize how you got there. So just like, it's cool to like, questioning things is important. I get that. But it's like appropriate to take your time with it. So it's like, if you're not going to be religious anymore, it's like, be respectful of like how you grew up. Don't consider it like, I'm not trying to give advice, but I'm trying to kind of talk like, this is how I would approach it. It's like, be careful about like how you look at your past. It's like, you can feel like because you were younger, you maybe were taken for a ride on certain topics. Like, I was a younger creationist despite being Catholic. So I was like, I wouldn't say I became like far right conservative or whatever, but like, I had these ideas or whatever that were just like really like ignorant and like malformed, like my freshman year especially, and like a little bit like when I was in high school. And they led to some very unpleasant conversations, which I think were necessary for me to realize like how reasonable other people were and how unreasonable I could have been sometimes. And it's important to check yourself sometimes and be like, like I'm a little stupid. I'm a little stupid. There's a lot of things I'm pretty dumb at, but there's a lot of things you're also good at. Like, you have value to add in certain situations. So like I've gotten to the point where I don't let like myself or other people make me feel like where I'm super adequate and fantastic, which is like whatever. Like, that's rarely the case. Like, I'm not surrounded by like cheerleaders all the time, but also I don't like when like people disagree with me or people say things that I don't agree with. I don't let it get me to the point where it's like when they say something like harsh and rash, it's not to the point where like I feel like I need to constantly be like responding and on edge, because it's not like, I'm not like my freshman year where like I always felt the need to say something about it, whatever, because it came from a place of insecurity of like, who do you think you are questioning these things? These things are fantastic. It's like, no, dude, you're stupid. You're kind of stupid a little bit, It's like, you're kind of stupid a little bit, but you're also, you can say some like pretty truthful things and like provide good things to produce into the world or whatever. So like, just be very like careful of like living too much on the extremes. Like, find it like a good like there are moments that call for each one of them, like where you need to like feel grateful for like all that you can like give, but also like humble about like how inadequate you can be in certain situations. And I've said a bunch of nothing in the past like 4 minutes, but that's kind of just the way I feel about like my religion and like people like deconverting or whatever. And me not being like super zealous about it, like I think people take that as a sign that like maybe it's not the truth. It's just maybe you haven't really been like I've kind of felt that way about science my whole life. It's like, that's not the main reason people stop doing it, but I've found a lot of conversations to be like that. It's just I haven't felt anything for it. It's just not really like my style or whatever. And like, that's all right, but I was just kind of like this kid that just did like whatever. I never really looked for trouble. I never really had the opportunity for trouble and stuff like that. I always had like difficult situations, but it's I was never really like that rebel or whatever. I was just like, yeah, I'm just trying to like do my own thing. Like I want to do my own thing. I don't want to get in trouble and then get attention and then that get in the way of like what it is that I want to do. Like if I want to do like anything in the future, I don't want that to be like a barrier at some point. Because it would just be frustrating and I wouldn't feel proud about that. I would just feel like annoyed. And if that did happen at some point, I would just probably move on from that thing and let it be, because that's just kind of how things turn out sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of like how like my younger childhood went. And then like when I went to college, like then I found myself like in a church group or whatever. And I had certain beliefs coming out of high school that kind of like I kind of carried into college and like eventually like left behind. But yeah, college, my freshman year, I'll talk about that a little bit, and that might take a little while. And then my sophomore year is a little bit easier to kind of just like wrap up or just put in a little like box. It's very quick time. And the junior year is a little bit more of like the growing, and senior year is kind of just like, I think it's the fruition of it all. And like now it's perspective, right? And then the coming years, we'll see what happens. So freshman year was like one of the first days that I got to campus. Like I was chilling in the dining hall, and I think this is what just like clubs do and like religious groups do, and people call it like manipulative. I've heard people say that like when I was younger, not when I was younger, but like in conversation I heard people call like that to be like manipulative, and I've kind of described it that way because it's just like you're looking for people who are like vulnerable. That's what they are. Like freshmen are very vulnerable and like very open to like new ideas, so you can find yourself in some pretty sticky situations when it comes to like religious groups or like clubs and like classes, stuff like that. So it's like when I was a freshman, I had this religious group come up to me, or this guy come up to me, and he was part of this religious group and he was cool and everything. I'm like, invited us over to his house, wanted to talk to us about like the faith and whatever, and I was like, yeah, I'm Christian, but I am Catholic, whatever. I'm assuming you're not, whatever. I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I knew we weren't like on the same page about like certain doctrines or whatever, and I didn't really know what my doctrines were, but I just knew we had disagreements. Like I just knew that some things were gonna come up that I'd be like, I don't know how I feel about you saying like certain things about that. Like I probably wouldn't agree. And yeah, things just kind of progressed from that. And eventually I became like president of this club, they became a club, but they were just still a religious group. They had their own like church or whatever. And I became president somehow of like this Protestant group. And they call themselves non-denominational, but they're Southern Baptists. Like you could tell just by the way, what they talk about. It's like very obvious, but I think it's just that they're a little bit like, they're Southern Baptists, but like, they'll move from like church to church. They'll move from like location to location, very like fluid, not like structure based, like very like contemporary stuff, which is like it's a good way to reach a big audience, and very like, I wouldn't say superficial like doctrine stuff, but it's like it's more like mere Christianity stuff that like C.S. Lewis would have wrote on. Like they have a lot of respect for that guy, and like I do too, but. Yeah, like that's the general vibe you'll get. Like it's for like very intro level, and like maybe once you get a little bit further, because I didn't spend too much time with them. Maybe once you get a little bit further, you get a little bit more like formation, like I guess like direction with whatever it is that they have in store, for like the upper class. Yeah, my freshman year was just pretty much that, and a lot of like conversations that were like difficult to have, I would say, but like more because like on my end, like I was just like this, I had like some very strong opinions about things that it was nobody's business to have strong opinions on certain things. And like it's embarrassing to say now, but it's like, yeah, some things that were just like, I don't know, like, certain ideas that I would get from like the internet, or I get from like my thoughts or whatever, just like ideas, and just like present, like the way I present myself sometimes, it'd be a little bit overbearing, or it'd be a little bit too much. And I look back at that now, and I'm like, I never was that in high school, so I don't know exactly how that came about in college. I think I was just trying to get it all out, like looking back, get it all out to like see then where like I actually do fall. And like thank God, because like now I can look back and like I'm not those things anymore. Like I'm not like a young earth creationist. I'm not super into like certain like red pill ideas or whatever, like super like left right wing conservative stuff. I'm just kind of like a little bit more like neutral on a bunch of stuff, and like that's an awkward position to have, because like people will like get frustrated with that, but it's like that's just kind of like the vibe I always give for myself. Like I never really super passionate about things. Like I can't force myself to be super passionate about things, but like I tried to be back then, and then I think that showed me like, no, you don't really care that much, because I didn't. It wasn't sustainable. I didn't really care that much about politics. I didn't really care that much about like certain like meditation or whatever. Like I wasn't really that passionate about it, but I talked about it sometimes on my channel, and just the people in general. And it was like I don't care anymore about that sort of stuff. Like I do care a little bit more about prayer. I think that's something a little bit more zealous about. But okay, there were difficult conversations to have with that church group that I was with, and they were very receptive, very patient with me, considering like what they were up against. You know, this crazy kid. They're just like, ooh, look what I think. They're like, okay, you know, calm down. Yeah. Some of my peers didn't have too much patience with me, but that was funny always, you know, because like I was a wild shot, I was a loose cannon. But yeah, it was like just that. It was very mere Christianity sort of stuff. Nothing that surprised me, you know, about like Christianity. You know, some of the like science and faith stuff was cool. You know, so I got introduced to some like different like apologists, like philosophers that like I don't really keep up with nowadays. I don't really like. There's not really much I think I gained from like apologists anymore. But like I used to be really like into that sort of stuff like my freshman year. But yeah, it was just kind of that, just like very mere Christianity, and we just kind of went through the year with that, and like I spent a lot of time with them, a lot of time with that group, and at the end of it, yeah, like things kind of happened, like where it was like my fault, and then like I ended up like leaving the group or whatever after my freshman year, and then my sophomore year, like I was very much left without a community, and that's kind of one of the things I resented about the group, even though I still love them and everything like that. It was just like, well, not just about the group. Isn't specific to the group. It's just like that's kind of the situation you find yourself with like any group where you leave and like there was a large community presence, and then you go and then you're just like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Because like you lose all your friends. Like I had a lot of friends within it, and I didn't only have friends with it, but I had a lot of friends within it that I like spent a lot of time with, and then now they were gone. Like I still hung out with them and everything like that, but it was like on the time they had, you know, so they were still college students, but they were doing this like church stuff, like kind of full time or part time, whatever. And then then the extra was like, yo, what's up, man? How you doing, man? And that was hard. That was hard. My sophomore year was like the most difficult part of like my college years. And I don't like who I was my sophomore year. It was like very, very difficult to get through, but whatever. Yeah. So my sophomore year was just like kind of going to like the Catholic group, because I was still Catholic, you know. Those were part of the tough conversations I had with like the church group, and they were, like I said, always respectful about that. But yeah, I was left kind of like, I went to like a few parties or whatever my sophomore year, and like I was like, this is boring. I don't really like this crap. So I started going to like Catholic group like sometimes, and like I would meet some guys, and like I always felt like kind of like by myself. I never really felt, because like it was just a little bit more of a laid back, like loose sort of thing going on. It wasn't like super involved. Like, what are you doing right now? I'm gonna text you. Like the Protestant group that I was a part of, and like that was all right, you know. But then, yeah, my sophomore year kind of ended. It was just like whatever, like it was terrible, and like in terms of anything and everything and anything in terms of everything. And then yeah, my junior year came around, and like I became like an RA. Like I got involved in a lot of things. I became president of a club, RA. Like I found a place. I found something to work towards. You know, if it was gonna be like with my residents, or if it was going to be with my club, or if it was going to be whatever. Like I was gonna work towards something, and like I felt like I had goals to meet. Like at the very least, it wasn't just like me taking classes, just like laying in my apartment all day. What the hell am I supposed to do? That sort of a thing. And that was cool, you know. It gave me some sort of like purpose. And junior year doesn't feel too long ago, actually. Like it was only a year ago, like when all this sort of stuff started. But like but when I started like going a little bit more to the Catholic group, it was cool, because like my friends started coming with me, you know. Like I finally, somehow he started checking it out, you know. I didn't really convince him or anything like that, but I had to I was like, yo, man, this club's alright, you know. And like anytime I say something like, yeah, this is whatever, man, maybe you should check it out. You know, it's just like he'll be like, no, check it out. We'll see what happens. And he started coming out, and then like you know he kind of left the group, the Protestant group too, and we were just kind of checking it out together, that sort of a thing, you know. And he kind of helped me along, and he kind of like him going was like me going, and so it was just like we were working together to like further to go further into the group, and it was cool. You know, this group was cool, and we were learning like a decent amount of stuff. Like I think the first semester of my junior year, we went like a decent amount, but then more like the second semester. Even though like COVID kind of started, we started getting a little like even though COVID like hit like halfway through the semester, like still kind of a decent amount happened like between like the beginning of the second semester and like COVID, and yeah, we got to meet a lot of cool people, like learn a bunch of cool things, and I feel like we got a lot of depth from like our religious or like our religious like we got a lot of depth like in our religion or whatever with like Catholicism and stuff, and yeah, that kind of all ended. Now I'm a senior, and like now things are a little bit more, you know, and like I'm still like a part of the group, like, but it's more like now it's a little bit more like self-discovery sort of stuff, like where I'm like it's like a lot of stuff is like kind of piqued my interest, whatever religion, where you know like you look into like the different priest orders, or you look into like how why they believe certain things about like marriage or whatever, or why they believe certain things about anything. It's like there's like a reason for it and everything like that. And like what I respect about the Catholic Church, and there's a lot of things like that have gone wrong. I get that. That's what people usually have like kind of like a knee jerk reaction to it, is like whatever, like all the negative stuff. But like what I respect about the Catholic Church and like their doctrines and their dogma, their teachings, all that sort of stuff, is like it's very clear what they believe. It's not, there's no vagueness. It's like you can talk to any Catholic and they might give you like this wishy-washy answer, like depending on who you speak with. That's just like a personality type, or how far along they are within like, or how much they know or something like that. It's just like a conversation like what you have with the person. But if you want to know anything about the church, you can literally find it. Like it's just, it's in the catechism, or it's in like some sort of like document that they put out, you know. Like it's not, if you ever want to be clear, like if you ever like are curious as to what the Catholic Church's position on certain things like evolution, gay marriage, blah 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 blah, it's like it's very clear. And people think, oh, it's just like hateful stuff, just ignorant stuff, and it's like some of the stuff I do disagree with, you know, like some things like doctrinal stuff, like maybe like about like whatever. I'm not gonna necessarily name anything, but like purgatory, I guess. I guess I did name something, but it's like there's like you can think, oh, these people are just stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. This is what they. This is. I'm pretty sure I know what their position is, and yeah, you can know what their position is, but it's like it's different to understand why they hold that position, and even then, it may not sound like reasonable to you or whatever, and it doesn't have to. But like that's what I like about the church. It's like it's very obvious what they believe. It's like there's like steps, like there's numbers, and you can like see what it is that they believe, and you can go one by one and talk about why all those are stupid, all those reasons are dumb, instead of just like having this vague idea of like you think this is what they believe, but you're not really entirely sure, and then you criticize it. It's like you're 100% gonna misrepresent like their position on something, and yeah, some of their justifications, like you may not like, I don't necessarily always agree with them, but you know that like this is what they believe, and it's like that's what I like love about the church. It's like they've done a lot of like there's been a lot of things that have gone wrong and will continue to go wrong, and things that, you know, we're just like not fixing, but yeah, their positions on a lot of stuff is like very clear, and the negative stuff that we see with the church or whatever that we've seen and we will see is like that kind of dissuades people from even like considering it. And it's that one's I don't think it's that difficult to like say why that shouldn't be like a barrier. But like, yeah, people talk about like it's an evil corporation, people don't want to support it, blah blah. People have like people always have like a very conspiracy theory like idea of like what the church is, and it's like I don't understand where they get this information, but there's like objective information out there that, like, you can find like stats on like what they do, how they handle things or whatever, and like, yeah, there can be secrets, but it's like it's a lot of things are very public in the Catholic Church, from what I've seen, and what's it called? Yeah, so like a lot of like the negative stuff have like kind of dissuaded people from looking into it. It's never like stopped me, but it's like, yeah, it's always been like that, and it's that's always unfortunate, because like they're always gonna do like things always like gonna go wrong. The church like terribly wrong, like disgusting stuff that happens. Um, and like I'm not gonna make an excuse for the church, but it's like more. There's always gonna be like trouble somewhere, and the church should be a place where that shouldn't occur. Like I understand that, but it's like yeah, people that shouldn't like if you go to like a university, you have to understand like the same thing. Like there's at one point they weren't letting like black people like I guess attend their university. There's like that was a possibility, or they were like segregated or something like that, or I don't know. Again, it's not an excuse for the church, but it's just like that is always like a barrier from people like absolutely like engaging with any of the sort of things that they have like to say about certain topics. It's like anything they say, it's wrong, like, and like that's usually what I've found, and like that's not like a helpful position to have because there's like a lot of things that the church influences that people do not realize. Like a lot of things people agree with the church on, but they don't realize that they do. Um, yeah, and like people have a little bit like I think a lot of our culture like kind of today is a little bit more of like an abandoned mentality rather than like a rebuilding mentality where things go wrong and then it's like we're done with that. And like that's not how like anything works. Like things are always gonna like research. Like this thing's been around for 2,000 years. It's not gonna go anywhere. So you, as much as you want to like ignore it, you're gonna have to engage with it at some point. And if you never do, it's like it's kind of a disservice because it's one of the largest organizations like in the world and it has like a ton of influence, and it's going to touch you at some point. Like it's going to be a part of like your existence. You're gonna have to engage with it, and it's better to be like prepared and not like if there is something you disagree with, like know why you disagree with this sort of thing. So like that's kind of what I would like. That rant was just a little bit more like why I respect the Catholic Church. It's like what they believe in and why you can disagree with it, sort of thing. Rather than like a lot of Protestant theology stuff is a little bit like it's like I don't really know what you guys are saying. Like I can say this is what I think y'all believe, and then they're like not quite, and then you never really know where to find out what they believe. And you can find a bunch of stuff on the internet, but it's very rarely concrete. And I think they do have like councils or stuff like that, but it's yeah, like the church has like a position literally on like an insane amount of topics. So it's like you can find out what they believe on like anything and why they believe it, even if you disagree with it. If you go into a certain topic with a mentality like they're wrong, like that's fine. It's like you can see why they're wrong because they have their things up, and that's kind of like my faith journey. It's just like finding that a little bit more. It's like yeah, the Catholic Church has done like a lot of like terrible stuff, and like that'll be a barrier. And at some point, they may even do something terrible, like to me, like something within the church happens to me, like I don't like, and it may drive me to like leave. But it's it doesn't mean like what they say doesn't exist or it's not like there anymore. You like it's still there. Even if you ignore it, and they're always gonna say something about something. They're always gonna have an opinion on a certain topic, and that's never gonna go away. And that opinion, people think it's not relevant or important, but it's like you have to understand like many people are Catholic, and it's like they're gonna be in positions where like they make decisions. So it's like it's better probably to understand a little bit more about this organization rather than just kind of ignore it, right? It's like you have to engage with it. That's what I meant by you have to engage with it. It's like you have really no choice. It's like people are always going to be like in a position like Senate, President, Prime Minister. They're just going to be in a position of power, and they're Catholic. They just so happen to be, and they're like devout. They believe a lot of the things the Catholic Church believes. And if you don't agree with it, find out why you don't, rather than like have an idea of like, oh, maybe I think I know why, and your ideas might be like legit. Like I probably agree with some of them, but it's like for me to agree with, like I usually don't agree with people's criticisms of the church because it's usually just like aimed towards like what they've done wrong. It's like, yeah, they've done a lot of things wrong. Like it's a organization of people, that are trying to do some like common good, but they fuck up a lot. But like when they do actually try to like criticize why like certain like things like contraceptives or whatever, like the church has a position on that, and people are like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you even have a position on that? Why don't you just completely agree with them? They have a reason why, They have a reason why they believe that. And if like you argue with them on that, you're probably gonna misrepresent their position and not and like kind of talk past them, and like it's not gonna be helpful, sort of a thing. And I think it's important for you to engage, because like if you disagree with them, you're going to find a situation where like somebody like that believes this stuff is in power, and you're not going to be able to understand why they're doing certain things and how to like argue against it or fight against it, sort of a thing. So it's like, I don't know, like that sort of stuff's important. It's kind of like I don't engage with politics, but I should, because it's like such a large part of like everybody's life that it's like you can't really escape it. And like everything that happens is gonna affect me at some point in my life. So that's just kind of fun. That's just kind of what I find with the church, and like that's just kind of been like my spirit journey. It's not really much of a spirit journey, share, but it's more just like kind of what I've found to be, kind of where I found myself. It's just like this perspective on the church and the way people understand, because people know like very little about it. Apparently, it's like it's very jarring. People know very little about the doctrine and why the doctrine is the way it is. It's just people just have opinions, and they assign like their explanations to certain topics at the Catholic on behalf of the Catholic Church, and it's like that's not their position. Like it's not why they say this thing. You may think it's wrong, but it's like you have to understand why they say this certain thing, so you can fight against it if you want to. So that's kind of the thing I have about it. So deuces. All right.